All right, the court is calling 2021 CR 8893, State of Texas versus Jessica Briones. Could I have parties announced for the record, please, for the state?
Michelle Hayden, Brittany Mitchell, and Michael Villarreal State.
For the defense?
John Paul, Your Honor, on behalf of Ms. Briones, she is present in the courtroom.
All right, are both parties ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you can let the jurors in. And everyone, please make sure that you speak into the microphones.
All right, to the jury.
Your Honor, is it this mic that goes to the Zoom? The
Yes,
tall one?
the smaller one is, but you need to speak into the big one. All right, everyone, please be seated. I'm glad everyone made it through the rain today. Unexpected. All right, defense, if you'll call your next witness, please.
We call Alice Harper, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Harper is by Zoom, ladies and gentlemen. Ms. Harper, can you raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can lower your hand. Can you state your name for the record, please?
Alice Harper. ALICEHARPER.
All right, defense.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Harper. Do you have another name that you go by?
No, but I'll give you my full name. My full name is Alice M., which is Martinez Harper.
Okay. And Ms. Harper, what do you do? What do you do for a living?
God gave me Ma Harper's Creole Kitchen, 31 years now.
Did you say Ma Harper's?
Ma M.A. Harper Creole Kitchen.
Okay. And Creole, CREOLE, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And Ms. Harper, you've had that for 31 years. What did you do before that?
I was an aircraft mechanic on F-15, F-16 for 22 years.
Okay. And in your current restaurant, Ma Harper's, do you you own that, correct?
Jesus allowed me to operate. And when I retired, my life was to give back. And I hired all second chances out of incarceration to give them, to help them get a new start. That's the balance of my life. And I'm 93 now.
And Ma, when you say second chances or people who've been, is this people who have been incarcerated that you hire?
I hired those that been incarceration. I've been doing this since 2001, working with the probation officers to give them jobs and allow them to continue to do their duties with the court. I allow them to do court and everything on the clock when they're able, and I still take care of them. No, God still helped me take care of them.
And Ms. Harper, when so in about 2018, did I approach you about a woman named Jessica Briones?
Yes.
And what was it that I asked you to do?
If I would give her a job. And
Okay.
I said, yes, sir.
Okay, and you knew that she was out on bond for this case, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. And did you give her a job?
I did, sir. And I'll give her another one if opportunity would allow it.
And how long did she work for you?
You asking me my mind. I just fell and I'm struggling to remember a lot of things. But it's long. Well, I can hardly now remember my kid's birthday. I have to do my finger work because I don't
Okay.
keep up with that.
That's okay. Let me ask you this, though. Do you directly supervise? Are you there at the restaurant when it's open? Or do you just
I
let
have
up?
no choice because my insurance will not cover me not being on site because of who I hire. I only hire second chances, handicapped from the state hospital. I don't hire, other than my family, I don't hire people of normal because they don't need help. I want to help those need help.
Okay. And when you so you are there supervising, did you have a chance to see Jessica at work every day?
Yes, sir. I see every one of them. And my motto is when you apply, you're knocking. When I open the door, I'm booking. That means I keep a record for my own behalf on them. Because if I'm going to help you, I have to watch your fallacies to correct you.
Okay. And what was Jessica doing for you? What were her duties? What was her job?
I do not hire anything but restaurant assistants. That means whatever I need done, I can ask you to do it. I don't give no special assignment, but I do special watching because this is my lifeline. I'm not going to let anybody disrupt it.
So would Jessica have worked in the front of house, in the waiting tables and hostessing and that kind of thing?
She worked the front of the house, the back of the house, wherever it was needed. But preferably, she worked the front of the house because I sit in the front of the house.
Okay. And by back of the house, we mean you're talking about the kitchen, right?
I'm talking about those certified to handle your food.
Okay. So, and did you ever see Jessica interacting with customers?
If you want the truth, the customers felt she was very good. I got no reports on her. Those that I got reports on, I did what you would do. I try to correct them. I would tell the parole officer, this person is not following rules and I'm not going to let them run my customer because that's my living. Most customers gave her good reports. She was gentle, she was soft-spoken, and she did everything she knew how to do to make them welcome. And when she could not answer them, she would come and say, Mom, would you talk to these people because they're asking me something I cannot say.
Okay. And did you have a chance to observe whether or not Jessica had a temper?
Yes, sir, because I sat where I can watch every move every one of them make. And when I see expression on her face, I ask a question, is there something wrong? Because I sound evasive, sir, because I can't see and I'm in a lot of pain right now. But to sum it up, she never got a bad report from the customer. That's who I go by. If my customer will say, Ma, that young lady, blah, 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 well, that young lady either didn't have a job if I corrected her and it didn't change, because I've let a lot of them go because of their attitude. Your salary comes from the customer, so you need to treat them like you want to be treated. That's mine.
Okay, and more broadly, did you ever see her lose her temper, but like in the back, in the kitchen, maybe get frustrated with a customer and then go to the back and just take it out on somebody there?
No, I can tell you, and I can do this on stack of Bibles in front of 1 million people as long as you don't let me fall. When she wasn't with a customer, she was directly across from me and we would carry a conversation. She smiled, I smiled, etc. in the back of the house. She very seldom had to go back there because I have my daughters, my grandson, and the people I hire mostly is in the front with me.
Okay, and would Jessica, do you know what she's accused of in this case?
You want the truth. I'm aware of it, but one thing I do not do, when the parole officer bring them to me or whoever, I don't question it. Either I'm gonna say yes or I'm gonna say no. That allows me not to judge you what I heard, but I'll judge you what I see.
Okay, and based on what you know about Jessica, about her character, about her temperament, you do know though that she is accused of beating her child to death, correct?
I heard about it and I prayed on it. And as far as temper, I want the court to hear. I'm a second oldest of 16. I know temperaments. I'm a mother of 6. And I know when a temper changes and when it
Excuse
doesn't.
me, Ms. Harper, just 1 second. Okay, yes.
I'm gonna object to non-responsive.
All right, that objection will be sustained. Ask your next question.
Ma, do you believe that Jessica could have committed the crime she is accused
Judge,
of?
I'm gonna object to relevance and invades the province of the jury.
Sustained.
And will the court allow me to make a bill later?
That objection is
By
sustained.
proffer.
That objection is sustained.
Just wait.
I pass the witness, Judge. Thank you, Ma.
State.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Harper, can you hear me?
I can hear you, son. Yes, sir.
Okay. I just have a couple questions for you. So my understanding is that you only hire people basically on second chances, correct?
90%. Yes, sir.
Okay. So do you have like people like convicted of murder working for you?
Yes.
Okay. And it's fair to say that Jessica didn't come work for you until after she killed her daughter.
Well, to be honest, I met her when they brought her to me. My social life is helping not just second chances, sir. People, period.
Okay.
I minister to people on the street. I do
So,
whatever I can.
Ms. Harper, I guess my question is specific to Jessica. Jessica didn't come work for you until after she killed her daughter, right?
Object to that characterization, Judge. The jury.
Sustained.
Let me ask it this way. Ms. Harper, Jessica did not come to work for you until after she was accused of killing her daughter, correct?
When I met her, her past was already done.
Okay.
I could not tell you whatever. I don't meet people until they brought to my presence because I don't do that.
And it's fair to say that you don't really know any of the underlying facts of the case, right?
Now you got to repeat it and I'm going to answer you correctly and honest. If you could just repeat it because I didn't quite get the question.
All right, State, could you move your microphone down?
Yes, Judge. Ms.
That's our
Harper,
microphone feed. We had feedback and couldn't comprehend it. There was feedback on the microphone. Yes, ma'am.
All right, and so for the record, there is someone there who's assisting Ms. Harper with Zoom, and I'm assuming there's no objection from the state of the defense that there's someone assisting her with Zoom?
no, Your Honor.
None from the defense, Judge.
All right, State, you can ask your question.
Ms. Harper, my question to you is that you really, based on what I'm understanding about your testimony, you don't know any of the facts or the evidence in this case, right?
No, sir.
Okay. And it's fair to say you haven't reviewed things like police reports or photos or videos or anything like that, right?
No, sir. I don't even look at television.
Well, you're better than me, ma'am. And it's fair to say that you can't tell this jury about anything that happened to Olivia around September 5th of 2017.
No, sir, I can't.
Thank you for your service to the community, Ms. Harper, and I'll pass the witness.
Thank you, Ma. Judge, I have no further questions this week.
All right, Ms. Harper, the rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you can speak to are attorneys for the state and attorneys for the defense.
I will not, even with you telling me, I do not do that. As I spoke in the beginning, I'm the second oldest of 16, born 1929. I will not do anything that's going to jeopardize me. And that is putting me as a liar, and I don't lie.
All right, thank you, Ms. Harper. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, and may God bless all of you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Harper.
Thank you, Ma. Judge,
You're welcome.
can we approach?
Yes. All right, defense, call your next witness.
We rest, Judge.
All right, state. Any rebuttal?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the state calls Dr. Kim Molina.
Good morning. All right, Dr. Molina, if you raise your right hand for me, please. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, you can lower your hand if you'll state your name and spell it for the record, please.
Yes, I'm Dr. Kimberly Molina, Molina.
All right, state.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Molina, how are you employed?
I am the Chief Medical Examiner at the Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office.
Okay, and how many, let me start with this. As far as the medical examiner's office is concerned, what is the role of the medical examiner's office?
The Medical Examiner's Office in the state of Texas is mandated by law to investigate certain types of deaths. Namely, those are deaths that are either not natural or that are unknown and could potentially be not natural.
And are you a law enforcement agency?
No,
So as far as when you review a case or when you do an autopsy, are you working as a law enforcement agent?
no,
Are you completely independent?
yes.
And talking about your employment, who writes your checks, your salary?
Bexar County,
And as far as you're aware, where does that funding come from?
the citizens of Bexar County, we are taxpayer funded.
And as far as the number of autopsies you do you get paid extra to do more autopsies?
That's actually a strange question. No, we don't. However, in the current climate, we actually have not put into place yet, but are putting into place. Our physicians are currently doing above and beyond because we are currently understaffed. And as long as that's occurring and the county has agreed to pay incentive pay to our doctors to stay, but it is not a common occurrence. It is not that we do cases for money. But the way the question was phrased, you could conceivably see it that way.
So it's not like, if you work a 40-hour week, you don't get paid more for doing 5 autopsies versus 6.
No.
And as far as testifying here in court, you get paid extra to do that.
No,
So these are all part of your duties as a medical examiner.
correct.
So as a chief medical examiner, how many other medical examiners are on staff here in Marion County?
We have 8 deputy medical examiners, 1 deputy chief medical examiner, and 1 assistant medical examiner. So a total of 11 medical examiners in our office.
So you're the chief of all of those 10 other positions,
Correct,
all being doctors.
correct.
And is Dr. Five one of the doctors on the staff?
Yes.
So I want to talk about your training and experience. Let's first start with your education. Can you describe for the jury your education?
I attended and graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with a degree in mathematics. I then attended and graduated from the University of Texas Health Science Center Medical School here in San Antonio, that's hence been renamed UT Health. I then completed an internship in family medicine at the University of Arkansas in Fort Smith, Arkansas. I returned to San Antonio to complete my training in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology. And I am board certified by the American Board of Pathology in anatomic, clinical, and forensic pathology
And how long have you been a medical examiner?
since 2003.
Do you know approximately how many autopsies you've completed yourself?
So I have spent my entire career at the Bexar County Medical Examiner's Office. When I started with the office, there were 4 medical examiners. As I just testified, we've now grown to 10. When I started in the office, we did maybe 1,000 to 1,500 autopsies a year. Now we do 2,000 to 3,500 autopsies a year. Ever since I've been with the office, those autopsies are equally divided amongst the staff. So in my nearly 20 years, you can divide out my portion of all of those cases, and that's about how many autopsies I've done. It's a lot.
For us, we don't do math. Or at least math in our head. You have like a broad number.
So assuming I do a minimum of, we'll shoot really low, 200 autopsies a year, which is very low. So I do at least 200 a year for 19 years. Can we just say 20 years? That would be what, 4,000 autopsies?
And do you also have other duties as it relates to the deputy medical examiners in reviewing their findings?
Yes.
Okay. Can you describe for the jury what that process is?
In the medical examiner's office, we have a quality assurance process that we've had since I've been there, which includes 1, the chief medical examiner reviews and signs off on all autopsies that are performed in the office as part of the quality assurance process. And we also have a secondary doctor besides the chief and besides the doctor who did the autopsy in cases of homicides that reviews the entire case and signs off.
So as a chief medical examiner, you sign off on every autopsy in Marion County.
Yes.
Do you have any other training or experience that's relevant to being a medical examiner?
So in addition to being the chief medical examiner for Bexar County, I am the editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Forensic Medicine and Pathology, which is the foremost forensic pathology medical journal in the United States. I also hold a clinical professorship at UT Health, the University of Texas San Antonio Medical School, in the Department of Pathology.
So it's fair to say you teach other doctors about being a forensic examiner. or the science or medicine as it relates to being a forensic pathologist.
Correct. I teach other doctors forensic pathology.
In this case, were you able to review or listen to the testimony of Dr. Anderson?
I heard some of it, yes.
So the first thing I want to talk about is he described himself as a scientist. Do you ascribe to that same position as a forensic pathologist and medical examiner?
I would say I'm a physician. We certainly use science and medicine to base our decisions, but I am a physician. A scientist to me is someone who does experiments in a laboratory. I don't do that. I'm a medical doctor.
And as a medical doctor, as a physician, I know this might sound a little bit morbid, but do you have patients?
Yes, I consider the examinations we do to be my patients.
Dr. Anderson talked about in his case, in his testimony, about not looking at basically reports and witness statements and things like that. Is that something in your practice that you wouldn't do?
No.
Why is that?
So the easiest way to explain is to relate it to the fact that I am a physician. When anyone goes to the doctor, the first thing the doctor does when they walk in the room is to ask you why you're there that day. It's not a guessing game. The physician doesn't go, let me try to figure it out, right? They say, what brings you here? I can't ask my patients. So witness statements, circumstances, any story or history that we can get, I have to get from external sources, meaning from medical records, from other people who may have seen what happened. And that becomes my history so that I can then do my exam. And just like any other physician would, kind of put those together to draw my conclusions.
So I think there's basically 4 areas that we want to cover today as it relates to Dr. Anderson's testimony. So the first thing I want to talk about is his opinion as it relates to the torn frenulum. Did you review his testimony for that portion?
I saw testimony. I don't know if there was side testimony, but yes, I saw a testimony about the torn frenulum.
Okay. And what was your understanding about his opinion?
My understanding is that Dr. Anderson raised the possibility that the torn frenulum could have occurred with intubation, putting in of the breathing tube.
Did you review this case?
Yes,
And did you review Dr. Fye's report?
yes,
Did you review the photographs?
yes.
Did you review the medical records?
I reviewed the records that were supplied by the district attorney. Yes.
Okay. Based on your review, do you agree with that opinion?
No, I do not believe the torn frenulum is a result of intubation.
Why is it?
Well, there's actually 3 different reasons for that. The first reason being because the torn frenulum is actually healing. It's a healing wound and it shows evidence of healing, which means it couldn't be acutely from intubation because it wouldn't have had time to show that healing. So the fact that it's healing means that it happened sometime prior to when the child was in the hospital.
Okay, I want to stop you right there real quick. As part of the review, did you get some, I'm probably screw this word up, odontology report?
A forensic odontologist did provide a consult for our office, yes, and it's included as part of our autopsy report.
Okay, and did his or her report reflect the same opinion that you have?
Yes, his report indicated the healing nature of the laceration.
So again, this frenulum that was torn, it was healing, right?
Correct.
You said there was 3 reasons why you don't agree?
Correct.
Okay, what's the second reason that you don't agree?
The second reason is that I guess the second reason to go in order would be that tears of the frenulum with intubation are very, very uncommon. They're rare. And when they occur, the physicians who cause them during intubation are usually aware and notate that.
And then what is the third reason that you don't agree with Dr. Anderson's opinion?
Because this particular laceration is not consistent with having occurred during intubation. And by that, I mean intubation lacerations usually go up and down on the frenulum. They're linear like this one is, but they go up and down this way. This particular laceration goes side to side this way, which is not consistent with having occurred during intubation.
And that last opinion, as it relates to the types or the distinction in the types of laceration, is that borne out in medical literature?
I am not actually aware of what's in the literature. I would say it's borne out in experience and knowledge of those of us who have not only seen the resulting lacerations, but also who have intubated people.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Dr. Molina, I'm going to show you what's already been admitted in States Exhibit number 121. What's in States Exhibit number 121? Does that show the laceration to the frenulum?
Yes.
Okay. And do you think it'd be helpful to show to the jury what you mean in the distinction in the types of whether it's a vertical or horizontal laceration?
Yes.
So I'm going to display it and it should show on your screen. And you should be able actually to mark on the screen as well. Do I need to zoom in more?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so if you can, using the photograph, and you can actually, the screen will mark if you touch it. What did you mean by this is a vertical? You said this is a vertical laceration, right?
So this is a horizontal laceration. It goes side to side, and we can see that the laceration starts or ends, but it goes from about here to about here. And you can see that that's going side to side along the kind of dental margin there of the gum line.
Okay, so I'm gonna clear what's on there. If it were to have been caused by intubation, what generally, I guess, the vertical, what would that look like?
So generally with intubation injuries, the laceration goes this way down the frenulum, which is vertical coming from, say, up and down, if you will.
So it's fair to say that Dr. Anderson, when he made his opinion about this being caused by intubation, he included the fact that in the medical records, it showed that, or he believes that doctors or clinicians looked at the frenulum but did not know or notice any trauma to it. Is that your understanding of his testimony?
That is my understanding, yes.
Are you concerned, based on a review of the medical records, that the clinicians did not notice a torn frenulum?
So I would have no concerns if that were true. I honestly did not look at the medical records to see if that was true. So assuming that it's true, though, I have no concerns if the clinicians did not see this laceration.
Why?
Because again, this laceration is healing. So one aspect of that means it's not bleeding. So there's not a good deal of blood or anything for the clinicians to find when they look. The other thing is, I think you can even appreciate from this photo, is in order to see this laceration that's going side to side, we actually not only had to, what we call it, evert the lip, meaning turn it up, but we had to pull it out from the mouth, right? So this is kind of pulled up and then out, which is something we can do when our patients are deceased. If a clinician were to say simply evert the lip to look at the frenulum, they wouldn't notice this laceration because it's at the connection of the lip and the dental line. You really have to pull the lip to fully appreciate this laceration.
As far as the torn frenulum is concerned, did we cover basically everything that you base your opinion on to say that you disagree with Dr. Anderson's opinion?
I mean, those are the reasons as to why I feel that this injury is not related to intubation. Specifically, the laceration is not related to intubation. Yes.
Okay. The next thing I want to talk about is the suspected fracture to the arm. Did you agree with Dr. Anderson's opinion as it relates to that?
I honestly can't say I know what Dr. Anderson's opinion was as related to the arm. My understanding of his testimony was that he didn't have an opinion because it wasn't looked at by a pediatric pathologist and he wasn't a pediatric pathologist.
Does that make sense to you?
No, it does not.
Why?
So pathologists look at tissue under a microscope. So we need tissue to look at under a microscope. So pediatric pathologists look at tissue from children under microscopes. And if we think about this, if you've ever fallen and broken a bone, or maybe you've had a child who's fallen, or you know a child who's fallen and broken a bone, you don't biopsy fractures. So you don't go back to the doctor and have the doctor take a piece of that fracture to look at under the microscope to decide if there's a fracture. So pediatric pathologists don't look at fractures. They might look at bone to see if there's a tumor, but not see if there's a fracture. The only doctors who really look at fractures under the microscope are forensic pathologists, because we are trying to decide, is it a fracture? Is it healing? Maybe even the timing of what happened. That is purely within our field. And would be the only physicians that I know of who would ever do that, unless, of course, you're worried about a tumor or something else.
Sometimes can it be difficult in children to differentiate between fracture and a growth plate?
Absolutely. Growth plates are where the bone is growing and fractures are where the bone is healing. And these two things under the microscope look exactly the same. So it's very difficult to differentiate those.
In this case, was it difficult to differentiate?
No.
Why is that?
Because the fracture didn't occur at a growth plate. So if the fracture occurs at a growth plate, it's difficult to differentiate. But in this particular case, the fracture callus, the healing bone, is nowhere near the growth plate.
Okay. So if he would have testified to something to the fact that this might be just some overgrowth at the growth plate, would that be consistent with the evidence?
No.
As far as you said, these are healing growths. Is that what I'm understanding correctly? Or what would you call it? How would you classify that?
So we use the term callus. It's much like a callus you might get on your finger or your foot, right? If you rub for a long time, you kind of get this healing because your body has been injured over and over, so it heals. In this particular case, it doesn't mean it's been injured over and over, but it's how the body heals. We call these fracture calluses. When a bone breaks or when a bone is injured in any way, it heals by growing new bone over that area. And then eventually that new bone kind of shrinks down into the regular bone. But we call it a callus because it kind of heaps up like a callus and then resorbs. So there's a process to it. At first it grows very large and then it starts to get smaller.
And are you able to say whether the callus in this case that was formed was caused by some external trauma?
Yes, it is consistent with being caused by external trauma.
I'm going to show you what's already been admitted as State's Exhibit 178. And again, you reviewed the photographs in this case, correct?
Correct.
And so in State's Exhibit 178, can you show when you're talking about this callus, what area of the bone you're talking about?
Just to clarify, this is a photograph of the humerus of the left up, I believe it's the left, it's cut off, but upper arm bone, right? And so we're looking at the humerus, that bone that's been bisected, cut in half longitudinally and then open. So it's the same bone, you could just put it back together from the mirror images. So the fracture callus that we're seeing is right here and right here. You can see those mirror imaged to the same area.
And where's the growth point?
Right here. Specifically, the growth plate is right there.
So again, this callus that's depicted in State's Exhibit 178, which are the two items that you circled first, those are caused by some external trauma.
Correct. It would be consistent with that.
The next thing I want to talk about is Dr. Anderson's testimony as it relates to the bruising on the bridge of the nose. What is your understanding of his opinion as it relates to the bruising or the cause of the bruising on the bridge of the nose and the eyes?
My understanding of his testimony was that he was describing that you can get bruising across the bridge of your nose when you have what we call a basilar skull fracture and the blood drains surrounding the eyes and across the nose.
Okay. Is this the portion of his testimony where he described as like raccoon eyes?
Yes.
Here, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's marked as States Exhibit 185 for identification purposes. You provided this demonstrative to the DA's office, right?
Correct. It's an illustration I found on the internet
Okay.
to indicate what raccoon eyes was.
And do you believe that it'd be helpful for the jury in understanding your testimony today as it relates to this issue to see this photograph?
Yes.
So I guess first question is did Olivia even have a basal skull fracture?
No.
So these raccoon eyes that he's talking about, are those for a result, he's saying, of a basal skull fracture?
That was his description of how they can occur.
And so I'm just going to move to admit just for demonstrative purposes, States Exhibit 185. Just demonstrative.
Judge, as long as it doesn't go back to the jury, I have no problem with the state using it for demonstrative.
All right, so for the record, States Exhibit number 185 is not being offered into the record. It's just, I'm sorry, offered into evidence. It's just for demonstrative purposes. Is that agreed from both parties?
That's what the state is intending to do. Yes, Your Honor.
No objection.
All right, you may proceed.
So showing. I forget, you know how to work this courtroom technology. You've done this enough, right?
I've been here a few times.
So when he's talking about the basal skull fracture and the raccoon eyes, how do they form?
So in the upper corner, we can see a photograph of the base of the skull, the basilar skull, right? And what happens, as you can see, there's kind of these lines drawn, just to go over, it's a little blurry here, where you can get a fracture of the base of the skull that sits right above the eye. And when that happens, you can get bleeding from the brain that then seeps down that skull fracture and surrounds the eyes, as we can see here. It's called raccoon eyes because it looks like a raccoon. This doesn't indicate that there's been direct trauma to the eyes. This indicates that the blood from the head seeps down surrounding the eyes. This can also happen with skull fractures here, and you can see the bruising behind the ear. That's what's in the other demonstrative, the other part of the photograph. But really, this is just showing how that blood can seep down around the eyes.
And can it eventually go up into the bridge of the nose?
Eventually, if it gets large enough surrounding the eyes, it can cross the bridge of the nose, but it doesn't start on the bridge of the nose, and it can't be confined just to the bridge of the nose because that's not where the blood's going. The blood is going around the eyes. And as that grows more and more intense, it can kind of start to abut or come across, but it has to start in the eyes and come to the middle.
I'm going to show you what's already been admitted as States Exhibit 117. Basically the eyes of the nose. What's presented in 117, is that consistent with raccoon eyes?
No,
Why not?
Well, the first and foremost reason is because there's no basilar skull fracture. So raccoon eyes cannot form.
So what is your opinion as it relates to how this injury could have occurred?
Well, secondly, this injury would not be consistent even with raccoon eyes if there was a basilar skull fracture because it's not in the correct location. We have a bruise kind of just distal, just below the bridge of the nose there.
Object non-responsive. Question was, how did it form, not how didn't it?
All right, that'll be overruled.
You can continue your answer.
So this would be consistent with a direct injury to this area, either being struck with or against an object.
I want to move on to this testimony about DAI. What is DAI?
DAI is diffuse axonal injury.
Again, you listened to part of Dr. Anderson's testimony. Did you listen to the portion as it relates to DAI?
I listened to some portions about head injuries, including DAI, yes.
As an expert, how would you describe that testimony?
I found it somewhat confusing.
Even as a doctor, could you understand what Dr. Anderson was trying to say?
I could not really understand his point, no.
So I guess the first I want to talk about, he makes this distinction about a still head injury versus a moving head injury, or stationary head injury versus a moving head injury. Can you define for the jury what that is?
So when we talk about head injuries, we can talk about a moving head injury where the head is moving and strikes against an object. So think about a fall or some elements of a motor vehicle collision, right? So the head's in movement, the head's moving and it comes into contact with something else. We call that a moving head injury. A stationary head injury is where the head is still and something comes into contact with the head. So unfortunately, think baseball bat, right? The head's still and something hits the head, right? Some elements of motor vehicle collisions can also be a stationary head. It depends on what's going on in the collision, but it's whether the head is moving and hits something else or whether the head is still and is hit by something.
When you're doing an autopsy, are you able to differentiate between the stationary head injury versus a moving head injury?
Sometimes when very specific injuries are present, we can sometimes give an opinion about moving head versus stationary head.
And does having an opinion about whether DAI exists help in making that differentiation?
No,
Why not?
because that's not one of the specific injuries that can tell us the difference between moving head and stationary head.
So DAI has no claim whether this is a stationary head injury versus a moving head injury.
Correct.
He talked a lot about this stain. I don't want to even try pronouncing it, but I understand that it's blue.
Yes,
Okay,
depending on who runs it, sometimes it's brown.
okay. He made a point to say that the medical examiner's office in this case did not do that stain.
Correct.
Why wouldn't have y'all done this test on this stain in this case?
So to clarify, we're talking about the beta amyloid precursor protein stain. And that stain highlights injured neurons. We don't need to do that stain because that is a marker for injured neurons, which can occur in head trauma. We know there's head trauma because there's a subdural hematoma, which is a traumatic injury, which you've heard. So I don't need to prove that there's additional injury because I already know that there's a significant injury. That's number one. Number two is that this particular protein stains all injured neurons for any reason. This child was in the hospital for about a day before she died. And during that time, she was essentially what we call brain dead, meaning there wasn't enough circulation, there wasn't enough oxygen getting to brain cells. The brain was essentially dying. And during that time, neurons are dying. Had we done this stain, I have no doubt it would have been positive. But does that mean that it's from the trauma? Or does that mean because it took some time to die? I can't tell the difference, but I have something else, the subdural hematoma, that tells me absolutely that there's trauma. So the stain is not helpful in this situation.
I want to talk about, he talked a little bit about falls, and how subdural hematomas can form. He described the brain as basically floating in the skull. Is that correct?
So to clarify, Dr. Anderson, I believed in his testimony, used this analogy that the brain kind of floats within the skull, which is not actually accurate for a healthy, especially a young individual. As we get older, our brains can get smaller and there might be a space. But normally the skull and the brain are right up against each other. There's no space in there. They're right there next to each other.
And is that important for basically sustaining life?
Yes, I mean, that's part of our anatomy. The skull is there to protect the brain. If the brain were just floating loose, it really isn't very protective. We think about helmets and how helmets have to be worn tightly and snugly. If it's not tight, there's no protection.
So, I mean, is it fair to say that our heads go through a certain amount of forces in every normal day living?
Yes.
So if your brain, let's talk about some of the things, like what are some normal forces that our head undergo in our normal everyday life?
Things people don't think about: sitting down in a chair. When you sit down, you're transmitting force upward onto your brain, right? And if it were floating, it could then move around and hit inside of the skull. Sneezing, coughing, these are pretty intense forces, more than the force of gravity. And again, we all survive these every day because our brain is protected by these membranes and by that skull.
So what is your understanding of basically the common medical understanding what a shortfall is?
So a shortfall is usually defined as anywhere between 3 to 4 feet.
And do shortfalls cause the injuries that were present in Olivia's case?
Not normally, no.
And why is that? I mean, that shortfalls don't cause these types of injuries?
Well, the forces generated from a fall of 3 to 4 feet aren't high enough to cause injury. And we know this from biomechanical studies, from research studies that have been done. There's a good deal of literature looking at this. There's also common sense. If you have children or have seen children and they're running around on the playground, they fall, they hit their heads. Children don't die from those normal routine activities. We don't die when we fall down and strike our heads. Now, certainly in older populations, that may happen, but specifically in younger, healthy children, they don't die from these shortfalls. Again, assuming it's this regular shortfall onto, a kind of a flat surface. Are there certain dynamics that could change that? Yes, which is why we need that history and why it's case by case in looking at these falls, but it's not common.
He gave an opinion about falling down stairs, that these could have caused Olivia's injuries, including the subdural hematoma, and what ultimately could have led to her death. How would you describe a fall down stairs?
Well, normally, if we think of a fall down the stairs, we might think that this is a very high fall, depending on how many stairs you are. But in reality, this is a series of short falls. It's one short fall after another. And so these short falls do not usually cause significant injuries like subdural hematomas. Could you break an arm? Could you, get scratches from it, bruises from it? Maybe, but not a subdural hematoma.
And have you ever done an autopsy for a child who has died from falling down the stairs?
Not that I can definitively say it was due to a fall down the stairs, no.
Do you have an opinion as to whether, based on the evidence that was received, and as well as the autopsy and medical records, as whether this Olivia's injury, including the fatal injury, could have caused her death? If a fall down the stairs could have caused her death.
So to clarify, do I have an opinion if the injuries seen at autopsy could have come from a fall down the stairs? Yes, I have an opinion.
I would ask that in a really long way. What is your,
That the pattern of injuries present in this case are inconsistent with having been caused by a fall down the stairs.
why is that?
Because again, we have to look at the whole, everything, right? Everything that's present. And again, we talked about a fall down the stairs won't usually cause a subdural hematoma, but we have a subdural hematoma. A fall down the stairs will cause, bumps and scratches and things as you fall down the stairs on bony prominences. So let's say the face, the elbows, the knees, which we don't have in this case. So the constellation of findings,
I didn't hear that last part.
which we do not have in this case.
What were you referring to? I'm sorry.
The bumps and scratches and things that you can see as you tumble down the stairs.
I see.
Correct. So the pattern in this case is inconsistent with a fall down the stairs.
So what was the ultimate cause of Olivia's death?
It was determined to be closed head injuries,
And what was the manner of Olivia's death?
homicide.
Thank you for clearing up Dr. Anderson's testimony, and I'll pass the word.
Defense.
Dr. Molina, I don't have a lot of questions. I have a few. You say that it's important to have a history, and since you can't get your history from your patient, you have to get it elsewhere, correct?
Correct.
And you want that history to be as complete as possible, correct?
When possible, correct.
Okay, and in this case, that history was created by several people, correct?
That would be my understanding.
Sure. And if you need to refer to your notes anytime, feel free to. You can't testify straight from them, but you can. refresh them.
Yes, there were several sources of information.
Okay, and did those sources of information include the trauma team at UH, University Hospital?
So we would have had those medical records. So that would have been a consideration. And then I have a physician's name listed in our report. I can't say if they were part of that trauma team.
Sure, but is that Gebhardt that you have listed?
I apologize for my pronunciation. Dr. Sabrina Carrillo?
Oh, okay.
And I'm
And
sorry,
then-
just one moment. Could you spell that for the record,
Absolutely.
please? For the
C-
court reporter.
Carrillo.
Okay, and then did you read the police reports? Or I'm sorry, I say you're talking about, you didn't conduct this autopsy directly, correct?
Correct.
Okay, it was Dr. Fine,
Correct.
who's already testified in this case.
Yes.
And so did he look at, and are those your notes that you're referring to, or his notes?
So to clarify, I'm referring to the investigative report. Our office keeps records of information that we have at the time of the exam, and then lists any potential further information. So I'm just referring to the notes from our report as to what I can see documented. I could only say what Dr. Fogg knew as whether or not it's documented. If he had additional information that's not documented, I wouldn't know.
Sure, because he's the one who created that report, right?
Actually, this report was created by our investigators. So this would have been information that came through our investigator section. If he got additional information himself, it would not necessarily be documented.
Okay, and included in what the investigators collected were their police reports.
91. Yes, it appears there was.
Okay, and also, is it noted anywhere that, or are you aware, that, Detective Barnes was present at the autopsy?
So it is noted that Detective Barnes asked to be notified for the time of autopsy. It wouldn't actually be in these records whether or not she was present. So I wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't know that.
You don't know.
Correct.
So, but if Dr. Feig testified that she was present, and if she testified that she was present, you don't have any quarrel with that.
Correct.
And then, do you know, and is there a note in there whether Detective Barnes's report was one of the reports that was included in the reports the investigators collected?
That I likely would not know, but let me just check.
Okay, and while you're checking, see if you see anything about the CSI report.
Okay. All I have is San Antonio Police Department records, so I don't know which records those are.
Okay, gotcha. And then, and even if it weren't noted in there, that doesn't necessarily mean that Dr. Feig didn't review them, right?
Correct.
Because he could have gotten it directly from Barnes if she was standing there, right?
Correct.
Either out of her mouth or could have gotten a report from her.
Correct.
Okay. So is there a narrative portion of the investigative report that your investigators made?
Yes.
Okay, and may I see that document? And did you, before you testify today, have you reviewed this report?
I've briefly reviewed it. I can't tell you I've read every word. There's a lot of, but
Sure,
yes. Yes.
But let me ask you, anywhere in that report, is there is a history of what happened, correct? Of what they think happened or some surrounding circumstances, whether or not they say this is what happened, they say these were the surrounding circumstances.
Correct. This would be the circumstances as relayed to our office as to what was believed to have occurred.
Okay, by Detective Barnes.
By, again, to generate this report, there are actually 4 different sources of information.
Okay,
She was one of them.
okay, and nowhere in that report does anyone mention that this child lived in a 3rd floor walk-up.
If you'll give me one moment, let me just
Sure,
read the
absolutely.
report. I
Take your time.
apologize. No.
And no one mentions that there were concrete stairs leading to that and no elevator leading to that apartment, correct?
Correct.
And no one mentioned that Olivia was left alone on the morning just before she was found.
Just to clarify, there is a mention that she was left alone.
There is a mention.
So, but it literally just says the next of kin left her alone.
Okay. And then let me talk to you for a little bit about that. Oh, and the report, or sorry, your report, the narrative section of the report, nowhere mentions that there was any possibility that Olivia had fallen down the stairs, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I want to talk to you for a minute about the torn frenulum that we were discussing, the laceration rather. There's a thank you. Yeah. So states 121 again shows us the area that we're talking about. And you said that this is inconsistent with an intubation injury, right? Because it goes vertically instead of it goes horizontally instead of vertically.
That the laceration, correct, goes
Okay.
horizontally instead of vertically.
Because how is an intubation injury like that ordinarily caused? Like what happens that causes that?
So when we intubate someone, we use something called a laryngoscope. It looks kind of like a C. You put it into the mouth underneath the tongue and you kind of pull up to pull the tongue out of your way. And it's hard. It's usually metal. And there's a ridge on it that has a light. So there's kind of a little, I'm doing a horrible description, sorry. But so if you can imagine a C with like a little ridge and we're putting it in and we're kind of trying to pull the tongue out of our way and you're pulling down. So you really shouldn't get the frenula at all, because if you do, you're really pulling in the wrong direction. But sometimes that can happen. And if you use it more as a kind of as a lever and you arc it up, then that ridge that's on it can hit against the frenulum and pull and kind of push down on the upper lip right in the middle. And you end up tearing it against the teeth, which is why it's a vertical laceration.
Okay. And would it surprise you? Said you watched part of Dr. Anderson's testimony, correct?
Correct. I don't think I saw the whole thing.
Okay, including the part about the laceration here.
I saw testimony about the laceration, but I don't believe I saw all of the testimony. So if there's later testimony about it, I may have missed it. I didn't have an opportunity to watch the entire testimony.
And you didn't look at the report that he was talking about, the section of the report that he was talking about, right? Of the university hospital records.
No, I did not look at the health records.
Okay, because he didn't say this was caused by an intubation injury. The child, if you look at the records, the child was already intubated. In that note, they say when they missed the term.
That would be sustained.
Okay, if the records say that when they missed the torn frenulum, the child was already intubated. And does that change what you think about this? I mean, he wasn't saying it was caused by intubation.
Judge, I can't object to him testifying.
Sustained.
Do you believe he was testifying that it was caused by intubation?
So his testimony was that it was iatrogenic, which means caused by a physician or caused by medical treatment. The only medical treatment that's associated with a torn frenulum, of which I'm aware, is intubation. So I think
Okay.
any physician watching that testimony is going to equate that as a intubation injury. You would have to give me another plausible explanation as to how a physician or someone treating this patient could cause this injury with medical treatment.
Okay, and he did that, but you're saying you didn't see that portion.
Yeah, I'm gonna check.
Sustained.
Did you see that portion?
I did not see him explain this laceration in any reasonable way.
Okay. So, and is that's either because you didn't review all of his testimony or because you missed it, if it's there, right?
It either means I wasn't present for the testimony, I didn't see it, or the reasonable explanation wasn't given.
Okay, and, or that you missed it, correct? That could be a third explanation.
I guess that's possible.
Okay, and by the way, there was nothing keeping you from being present for the testimony. You were entitled to come into the room, correct?
There was nothing keeping me from the testimony as far as this court is concerned. However, I do have duties and responsibilities as the chief medical examiner, and I don't have the opportunity to sit through hours of testimony.
Fair enough, but you were able to review part of the testimony from YouTube, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but you testified, I guess, that you didn't review, for whatever reason, you didn't review all of his testimony, correct?
I saw what I believe to be the majority of his testimony. However, I was pulled out into my other duties towards the end. I don't know exactly what happened at the end, but I would say I likely saw the majority of the testimony.
Okay, now let's talk about when you say that this injury we're looking at right here on state 121 is a healing injury. Right. Tell us what evidence of healing there is there.
So it is very difficult, if not, it is very difficult to testify from a photo. We rely on what we see at the time of the autopsy to draw our conclusions. And so I rely a good deal on what was seen at the time of the autopsy. From this photograph, I can see that the edges of this wound appear rounded, they appear smooth, right? And wounds kind of smooth out when they start to heal versus if you just injure yourself, they tend to be a little more ragged. They also tend to be bleeding. I don't really see a good, now again, I'm talking specifically about the laceration, the tear here. I don't really see any blood or anything in relation to that laceration, and I see these smooth edges. Other than that, from a photograph, it would be very hard for me to tell you. What I have is a report that specifically says that this is a healing laceration.
Okay, and let me ask you this. When you say it's not bleeding, what causes bleeding?
Injury to blood vessels.
Okay, and don't you need another factor there for something to bleed?
Blood in the blood vessels. I guess I'm not asking what you're looking for there.
That's exactly where I was going. Now, tell the jury what livor mortis is.
Livor mortis is the settling of the blood after death.
Okay, and where does that blood settle?
With gravity. So if you're lying on your back, it settles to the back. If you're lying on your front, it settles to the front. So it settles with gravity.
Okay, so if, for example, in this case, Olivia had been lying on her back when she died, what happens is the heart stops pumping the blood around the body, right?
Correct.
Then it settles with gravity to the lowest point, right?
Correct.
Okay, and then you said, and you were kind of insistent about it when the prosecutor asked you if that if that ossification in the humerus was caused by external trauma. You said, you corrected him and said it was consistent with that, correct?
Correct. I don't believe that's insistent. I believe that's saying consistent with.
I'm sorry.
You said I was insistent that it was due to trauma. I
Well,
said it's consistent with.
What I meant was you corrected the prosecutor. He twice said it was caused by that, and both times you corrected him to say it was consistent with external
I want to
trauma.
object to the sidebar.
All right, sustained.
Okay. Did you correct him to say that it was consistent with rather than caused by?
My testimony was that it was consistent with. Yes.
And that's still your testimony, right?
Yes.
You cannot say what caused it, correct?
I could more easily say what didn't cause it, but correct.
Okay. Now, so you said the beta amyloid stain will tell you that there was head trauma, right?
Correct.
And the specific head trauma that stain is used for is to detect DAI, correct?
So again, just to be specific, I'm sorry, because there's a beta amyloid protein. This is beta amyloid precursor protein that we're testing for. And it tests for injured neurons for any reason. So no, it is not just used to detect DAI.
Okay. And then Dr. Gebhardt, did you watch any of his testimony?
No.
Okay. If he also said that the brain sort of floats, I mean, I think the point there is just that it's not strapped down. Would you agree that the brain is sort of, I'm not saying there's space, but that it does, that it can move inside the skull?
So the brain is surrounded by fluid called cerebrospinal fluid. The brain is not strapped down. So there is some movement. I just really don't like the term floats because people think of floats as just kind of basically floating there. It's really kind of, I don't want to say entrapped, but there is a fluid surrounding it and there is some movement, but we're talking about minuscule little movements, not free floating in a vat of water.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Now, you testified you didn't think that these injuries that killed Olivia were consistent with falling downstairs, correct?
Correct.
And you said because stairs are a series of short falls, right?
Correct.
Now, your undergraduate was in mathematics.
Correct.
Did you take any physics courses?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the concept of acceleration in gravitational pull?
Yes.
Okay. So as something falls, it begins moving faster, correct? Later in the fall.
It depends on the dynamic of the fall.
Okay. But I'm talking about just a free fall.
In a
Okay.
free fall, the force of the fall is purely the force of gravity.
Okay. And in a free fall, the force of the fall increases, that is the speed of the object falling, and therefore the force increases with time, correct?
So I'm so sorry to be nitpicky, but the force of the fall stays the same. It's the force of gravity. The speed increases. Speed is not a force.
You're absolutely correct. And no, and I
Dynamite.
appreciate you being nitpicky. So if you are falling down a flight of stairs, I think, is your point that those stairs are interrupting the fall. And because the fall is basically starting over each time, then it becomes another short fall, then a stop, then another short fall.
Correct.
Okay, but if someone is falling down the stairs and doesn't stop completely on each step, then while it is going to be breaking the fall, it's going to be slowing that acceleration down some, you're still going to have acceleration, correct?
So again, acceleration is the force. That's the force of gravity. You're talking about speed. So the speed will be reduced with each impact of the stairs, but the force, which is the force of gravity, remains the same.
Right, but the acceleration that comes from the upward acceleration of the speed, because technically any change in speed is acceleration, correct?
So acceleration is the force of gravity.
Right, but what I'm saying is that speed increases because of the acceleration, force of gravity. It is then, that is also interrupted by the falls, the landings, each landing, correct?
Correct. So the force of gravity remains the same. The speed will increase, decrease, increase, increase, decrease. But yes, what you're talking is from stairs is a stair step. So instead of the speed just increasing, say like this, it's going to kind of increase as a stair step because it'll increase, decrease, increase, decrease as you hit the stairs.
Okay, but it's still continuing, the speed is still continuing to increase is my point.
It might, it
It
would
might.
depend on the dynamics of the fall. Yes.
And that's the thing, we don't know. If someone were falling on very wide stairs and landed and stopped completely, then the speed is only going to increase the distance over the distance of one stair, correct?
Correct.
But they're typically, that's not, somebody's not stopping completely when they're falling downstairs, correct?
Typically.
Okay, so, and you said that you have never done an autopsy that you can definitively say was caused by a fall down the stairs, correct?
In a child.
In a child, I apologize.
In a child.
Okay. You don't deal in certainties, do you?
Not usually, no.
Okay. And there, right? You kind of as a, and I understand you don't want to be classified as a scientist, but as a person who works in science or works with science, at least, let's put it that way, you try to avoid absolutes, right?
For the most part, yes. We deal in probabilities.
Okay, so you have never done an autopsy that you can definitively say was caused by a fall down the stairs. An autopsy of a child that you can definitively say was caused by a fall down the stairs.
Correct.
That's the only thing you testified to in answer to that question.
I don't know if that was that was the answer to that question, then yes. There was much more testimony. I don't know what else I said.
Okay, that's fine. I pass the witness, Judge.
Just a couple questions, John. As far as kind of going backwards and forward, he's asking you about definitively, have you ever had a case where you can say that a child's falling down the stairs? Have you ever had a case in which is your opinion that is consistent, not necessarily consistent, that is your opinion that the child fell down the stairs as a manner of death?
So again, unfortunately, because I'm nitpicky, falling down the stairs would be a mechanism of death, and we don't actually ever determine that. We only determine cause and manner. So manner of death in someone falling down the stairs would be accident. The cause of death would be the injuries that were sustained in that accident. So head trauma. We don't determine mechanisms. We can give opinions, expert opinions in a court of law about mechanisms, but I don't believe I've ever put out a report that said that the cause or manner of death was falling down the stairs, because that's neither a cause nor a manner of death.
You were talking about specifically as it relates to state's exhibit number 121 that's in front of the jury, that it's hard to testify from photos alone, right?
Correct.
Why is that?
Photograph is an image. I'm sure we've all seen photographs where we're like, oh my God, it didn't look like that, right? So it's an image. And so we rely a good deal on what we saw at the time. And the photographs, while they're helpful representations, are not the actual finding. And so the reports are where we document what was actually seen and what the actual finding was. The photos help us to illustrate that, but unless you're there actually seeing it, it can be, there can be subtle differences. And again, I wouldn't want to make a decision based solely on a photograph. I would rely on the documentation, the report, what the physician saw in conjunction with the photographs.
And it's fair to say you've heard not just in this case alone, but Dr. Anderson's testimony in other cases before.
Yes,
And he doesn't have a problem doing that, does he?
I've seen him testify in cases before where he has drawn conclusions from photographs. Yes,
Photographs alone, essentially.
yes.
Did you review Dr. Anderson's report that he provided in this case?
Yes,
And you listened to the majority of his testimony, right?
correct.
Was his testimony consistent with his report that he provided for the most part?
Again, I was somewhat confused by some of the elements of the testimony, and in reading the report, there were some elements that seem to contradict each other.
So, am I understanding this correctly? You're saying that parts of his testimony were contradictory to the report?
As I understood his testimony, yes.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Just a couple of questions. You said that you do not believe that the injuries that killed Olivia were consistent with a fall down the stairs as the mechanism of death, correct?
Correct.
And just to be clear here, the cause of death here was injuries sustained due to blunt force trauma, correct?
Well,
Due to blunt force, sorry.
the cause of death was determined to be closed head injuries, which are blunt force injuries. So blunt force injuries to the head. Yes.
Okay. Have you reviewed Dr. Feig's testimony?
I saw the majority of his testimony as well.
Okay, and he says that both Dr. Feig and Dr. Anderson, well, let's start with them, testified that that all of these injuries were in fact consistent with a fall down the stairs as the mechanism of death.
Judge, I'm going to object to counsel testifies.
That will be sustained.
Did he say that?
I don't recall Dr. Feig saying this is consistent with a fall down the stairs.
Okay. You reviewed his whole testimony?
Again, I saw the majority of the testimony.
Okay. All right. And then Dr. Feig didn't come back to testify to refute Dr. Anderson's testimony, yet he was the one who was there and did the autopsy, as you pointed out, right?
I'm going to object to the relevant and argumentative.
All right, that'll be sustained.
Did you all talk about Dr. Feig coming back to testify instead of you?
I'm going to object to the relevance, Judge.
That will be overruled.
Decisions of who testifies in particular cases often aren't up to us in our office. We come when we're subpoenaed. So the DAs ask us to come and we come. So it wasn't a decision that Dr. Feig and I made. The DAs asked for my testimony and I'm here to testify.
So to be clear, it was the state who decided to bring the big guns instead of Dr. Feig, correct?
Judge, I'm gonna object to argumentative.
Sustain.
It was the state who decided to bring you instead of Dr. Fine, correct?
It was the state who subpoenaed my testimony, yes.
Okay. And when did you get that subpoena?
And now that I said that word, I'm going to say it was the state that asked for my testimony.
Okay.
Usually we come under subpoena. Personally, I never actually see the subpoenas, so I don't know if we have one or not.
Okay,
They coordinated with our office for my testimony.
I apologize. When was that?
I honestly don't know.
I'm sorry.
I honestly don't know.
Do you have a rough estimate?
Judge, I'm gonna object to the relevance.
Oh, that'll be overruled.
May I consult my calendar?
Whatever you need to check.
Well, honestly, that would probably take a long time. I'm just going to rough estimate a few weeks. It was before, I believe it was before the trial began.
Okay.
But
That was,
again, we're
that,
pretty busy.
that was the distinction I was looking for. And then, you said that, oh, and if also the EMTs who initially treated Olivia said that they believed these injuries, or sorry, he believed these injuries, there was one who testified, believed these injuries were consistent with a fall down the stairs. Do you disagree with that?
Judge, I'm gonna object to mischaracterization of evidence.
All right, that objection will be overruled.
If that was the testimony.
Again, all I can testify to is my opinion, and my opinion is that the pattern of injuries in this case is inconsistent with a fall down, having occurred as a fall down the stairs. As described, we take all of our cases, as I said, case by case. So I need, which I believe was also Dr. Fye's testimony, I would need additional data, additional information. If we are being led to believe that these injuries are from a fall down the stairs, I would need a very specific circumstance of how that could occur. But simply a fall down a regular flight of concrete stairs, in my opinion, is not consistent.
So your answer is yes, you would disagree with that.
I disagree with that opinion, yes.
Okay. And if Dr. Gebhardt said that these injuries were consistent with the fall down the stairs, would you disagree with that?
Judge, and again, I'm gonna object to the relevance of what she agrees or disagrees with another witness. She's testified as to her testimony.
All right. Could I have parties approach, please? All right, defense, you can ask your question.
Thank you. If Dr. Gebhardt testified that he believed that these were consistent, and I'm saying if he testified to that, that these were consistent with the fall down the stairs, these fatal injuries, would you disagree with that?
Judge, I'm gonna object to the relevance.
All right, that'll be overruled.
So again, in understanding the question, you're saying these fatal injuries. My testimony is that the pattern of everything seen in this case is not consistent with the fall down the stairs. I'm not taking one element and one element only. I feel that your question is intentionally trying to mislead me because you're taking one element and saying the fatal injury. I'm saying the pattern in this case is not consistent with a fall down the stairs.
Okay, and let me, because the last thing I want to do is mislead you. So let me be clearer. When I'm talking about the fatal injuries, you're right, I should probably broaden that a little bit. I'm talking about the acute injuries in this case, which we've heard testimony, and maybe you disagree with this. I'm talking about the fresh injuries, let's just call it that. The pattern of the fresh injuries, or are you talking about, because you say all injuries, are you including the chronic injuries?
I'm including the absence of injuries.
I'm sorry?
As I testified, I said that if you fell down the stairs, I would expect bumps and bruises to occur at bony prominences. I would expect scrapes on the face, on the knees, on the elbows. I would expect more injuries in a fatal fall down the stairs than simply head trauma. So it's not just the injuries that are present, it's the absence of injuries that are present. Hence, the pattern in this case is not consistent with a fall down the stairs
So your testimony is there aren't enough injuries?
or a fall down the stairs.
I passed the witness, Judge.
State.
Just so that I understand, when you're talking about the pattern of injury, in this case, it's not consistent with the fall down the stairs. What are you talking about?
So again, we have to look at every single circumstance we're given in a case by case situation, right? So if we were really going to analyze the fall down the stairs, we'd have to look at the stairs. Is there anything else on the stairs? I mean, there's a lot of variables, right? One of the things we look at though are the injuries present on the decedent, the patient who died, right? And again, as I testified to, in the hypothetical of a concrete set of stairs with a child falling down these stairs, it's an active fall. You don't simply fall head, 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 head. You're rolling and falling down the stairs, which means you would get bumps and bruises, scratches, what we call abrasions, to the places that are striking the stairs: knees, elbows, your cheeks, your nose, your head, your shoulders, right? As well as any other injuries, maybe a broken arm, maybe a broken neck, which is actually the most common way people die when falling down the stairs, right? So we have to look at the pattern of both the injuries that are present and the injuries that are not present when given a hypothetical about what could or could not happen. In this case, with that pattern of injuries, knowing that we are the ones, or Dr. Feig is the one who is able to see the entire body and look at all of those injuries and lack thereof, it is my opinion that this would not represent a fall down the concrete stairs as the hypothetical situation I've been given.
And when you're talking about that injury, pattern of injury, and absence of injuries, you're talking about if there were injuries present, acute injuries, right?
Correct. If this is an acute event, I would expect these acute injuries.
So it's fair to say, or let me phrase it this way, were there non-acute injuries as well observed and demonstrated during the autopsy of a living person?
Yes, there are older injuries as well as acute injuries.
And do some of those older injuries include what we talked about, the bone, the callus that was formed? Would that be included in one of the older injuries?
Yes,
So that would be a non-acute injury.
correct.
That's what it's.
So would you, if you fell down the stairs, would you have things like bruises on your hands? Is that what you'd expect to see?
So again, it's the dynamics of each fall that we would have to consider. So witnesses for a fall down the stairs are very helpful because they can tell us how the fall was. But if we think about it, though, a fall down the stairs is sort of a roll down the stairs. So injuries to, again, the bony prominences, the things that are going to hit when you fall, your shoulders, your hips, your nose, your cheeks, your elbows, It could be your hands, maybe the back of your hands as you go through.
So your answer is yes.
It possibly, yes.
Okay. And then you might expect to see bruises on the arms, you said, and on the elbows.
On the elbows, possibly, yes.
Okay. Would you expect, could you see bruises on the face and nose?
Yes, usually it's more bony prominences, eyebrow, cheekbones, but possibly the nose, yes.
Also, you could see bruises on the abdomen if it landed on an edge of the stairs, right?
Depending on the dynamic of the fall, that would be
Sure.
possible.
But what we do know is that Dr. Feig, as you just this second testified, was the one who actually saw the body, right?
Correct.
And if he testified that he believed these injuries were consistent with a fall down those particular stairs when he was shown a picture of those stairs, would you have any reason to disagree with the person who actually saw the body and was able to take everything into account?
I don't recall that that's what Dr. Feig said in his
But if he
testimony.
did,
If
I'm
he's,
sure he recalls.
if he said that, then, again, we are physicians, we can have separate opinions. We could have a discussion about it, but from what I'm seeing from his reports, I don't necessarily agree with that opinion, if that's what he said.
Well, and if he testified that he wasn't told about the stairs even existing, then that wouldn't be in his report, right?
Correct.
Okay, pass it.
No more further questions.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Subject to recall, please, Judge, but they're welcome to do it by Zoom if.
All right, doctor, the rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state and the defense. Thank you. All right, state, call your next witness.
State calls Dr. Lucifer.
Would you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
All right, thank you. Have a seat. State your name for the record and spell it, please.
James Lewis Lucifer, and that's Lukefar.
State.
Morning, Dr. Lucifer. Can you please tell the jury how you're employed?
I'm a child abuse pediatrician, and I'm the medical director of the Center for Miracles, which is Santa Rosa Hospital's facility for examining children who may be the victims of abuse or neglect.
All right, and state just for a moment. I haven't been looking. Does anyone need a break? Okay, all right, state, you can continue.
And how long have you been in that position?
15 years.
Can you tell the jury about your educational background?
I got my bachelor's degree at the University of Texas at Austin in 1974. I got my medical degree at the University of Texas Medical School in Dallas in 1978. I did my pediatric residency training at the University of Texas in Galveston. I finished that in 1981. And I was in private practice for 12 years. And then I was on the faculty of Driscoll Children's Hospital in Corpus Christi for 3 years. That was in the mid-90s. And while I was there, I started focusing my career on child abuse and neglect. And I established a small clinic there for examining children for abuse or neglect. And then in 1996, I went back to University of Texas in Galveston to do the same thing. And I was there for 11 years before I came here to San Antonio.
And have you taught any courses with regard to child abuse?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
Well, a big part of my job at all the places I've been has been to teach medical students and pediatric residents, nursing students, other learners about child abuse and child neglect and how to recognize it and how to treat it.
And are you board certified in child abuse pediatrics?
Yes, I am.
And have you been involved in any research or publication regarding child abuse in pediatrics?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury about that?
I've authored or co-authored about, probably about 20 or 21 articles in the field, or about the field, I should say, and in what are called peer review journals. And then I've written probably half a dozen articles or book chapters that were not in peer review journals.
And throughout the course of your career, how many children would you say you've examined?
A lot. I was a general pediatrician for 12 years and saw a lot of kids there. And as a child abuse pediatrician, I would say probably it's, this is just an estimate, probably 8,000 to 10,000.
And what specifically is child abuse pediatrics?
Well, it's a specialty within pediatrics, and our focus is on the recognition, diagnosis, treatment of children who've been abused or neglected, and also as much as possible to try to identify ways of preventing abuse or neglect as well.
And we already heard from Dr. Norat, but now that seems like a long time ago. Could you just refresh the jury's memory what the Center for Miracles does?
So it's a clinic, and also it's a office for the group of us that are child abuse pediatricians here in San Antonio. And currently we have 4 faculty members. And currently we have 2 fellows. Those are pediatricians that are in training with us to become child abuse pediatricians. And Dr. Norat was our fellow until he finished the program a little while ago, year and a half ago.
And do you know how often the Center for Miracles, or in your position, you guys find that there is not abuse when you're examining children?
So really, every child who comes to our attention has been referred by someone who's already worried about that, either another doctor or Child Protective Services or police. And so we review the information given to us, and we, if possible, we examine the child. And we do keep numbers on that question, and about a little over half the time, about 55% of the time, we conclude that we didn't think the child had been abused or neglected, or the injuries are such that we can't tell for sure.
And in September of 2017, were you involved with the treatment or examination of Olivia Briones?
Yes, I was.
Can you tell the jury how you were involved in that?
So Dr. Norat and I were on call for our group, and we got a call from University Hospital, from the ICU, and they let us know that Olivia was in the ICU and asked us to come take a look at her and give opinions about whether we thought her injuries were due to abuse, and also to make recommendations to them about any additional testing that we thought might be needed, and also to help with communicating with the authorities, with Child Protective Services and with the police.
And what did you guys review in regard to Olivia Briones?
So by the time we got there, which was about mid-afternoon, the day she was admitted, there were no family members present. So we reviewed the medical records that had been prepared up to that point, and we reviewed her laboratory testing, the x-rays and CAT scans and so forth. And we talked to the doctors in the PICU.
And what were your findings with Olivia Briones?
So, okay, I'm sorry, I should also add that after we did all that, then we did examine Olivia. Although she was so critically ill that our exam was really pretty limited. Like she was so ill that we couldn't really even move her head or her face, couldn't look in her mouth because of the endotracheal tube. But we did examine her to the best of our ability. And as far as our findings go, her injuries were obviously very severe and very widespread. And they really were not in our opinion, consistent with accidental injury, but were provided substantial evidence that's the phrase that we use, that her injuries were were caused by another person.
And what was that based on?
The for starters, her subdural hemorrhage was huge, and it was compressing her brain to the point that she was approaching death. And that is really not consistent with minor falls and accidents around the house and things of that nature. It's really much more concerning for a really high energy impact of some kind. And this concern that she'd been injured by another person was really heightened by the other injuries that she had, the injuries to her, the other head injuries that she had, the big bruise on her abdomen, the findings on her arms, and the other visible injuries that we could see.
You familiar with William Anderson?
A little bit. I think I've read a couple of reports that he's given on other cases I've been involved with.
And to your knowledge, he doesn't have any special expertise with regard to child abuse or child abuse pediatrics.
Not that I'm aware of.
Were you guys able to look at Olivia's frenulum at the hospital?
We were not. She had the endotracheal tube in her mouth. She was hooked up to the respirator, and the tubes are secured by a lot of tape that runs across the mouth. And so, and we could not disturb that. She was way too critically ill for us to try to run a risk of dislodging that tube or anything of that nature. So we were not able to look at her mouth.
And with regard to the injuries that Olivia had, aside from the head injuries, as you mentioned, and the injuries to her arms, was there anything else that concerned you for child abuse?
Yes, she had a really quite large bruise to her lower abdomen. And that's an area that's really not commonly injured accidentally, especially a large injury to that area. And that concerned us as well. Just gonna look at my notes real quick just to make sure I don't miss anything else. She had a number of multiple old scars to the tops of her hands and feet. And she had 3 or 4 pretty unusual healed scars, like on her chest wall and arms as well. Oh, she had bruising to her ears. Excuse me, I apologize. Both ears were bruised, which is also quite unusual in accidental injuries. She had a very large area of swelling, excuse me, on the back of the left side of the skull. I think that's it.
In your opinion, could Olivia's fatal injuries, the subdural hematoma, have been caused by a fall down the stairs?
My opinion is that it's very unlikely that that was from a fall down the stairs.
What is that based on?
So, as Dr. Molina has already gone through, in a child, a fall down the stairs is a series of short falls. And the explanation that I would give is, if you can just picture in your mind a 4-year-old child, a small child, standing at the top of stairs, and if that child falls, that's basically, she falls however tall she is, plus maybe an extra 6 or 8 inches. Okay, so I'm going to say, let's say she was 3 feet tall. So her falling, that first fall would be 3 feet probably, plus a little bit more, 6 or 8 inches. Okay. And then what actually happens most of the time when a child falls down the stairs is that first fall, they land and then they stop. And usually it's just the one fall. Now, if they're in motion a little bit, they may kind of go thump, thump a couple more times, but those extra thump thumps are very short falls, just really a few inches. So most of the time, stair falls in children are really minor injuries and rarely cause significant injuries, rarely require hospitalization or anything else. The exception being, in, like as Dr. Molina mentioned, the occasional broken arm if they put their arm out in a certain way, but otherwise very minor injuries.
And you've reviewed the records, you examined Olivia, you've heard the testimony. The callus to Olivia's arm, was that an acute injury or was that a prior injury?
She actually had 2 of those, and they were old injuries.
Now, Dr. Anderson testified he hadn't read any literature or reviewed any studies with regard to stairway falls in children. In the course of your career, have you had to study stairway falls or review articles or studies on stairway falls?
Yes.
And what is the consensus on stairway falls?
The consensus in the medical literature is pretty much what I mentioned, and that is that stairway falls in children tend to be very short falls, and it's rare that they cause significant injury.
I'll pass the witness.
Just a couple of questions, Dr. Whitaker. Where's the Center for Miracles based? Where is your headquarters?
We're about 3 or 4 blocks from here, next to what's now called the Children's Hospital of San Antonio.
Okay, and so if Children's Hospital of San Antonio needed a referral to y'all's, I guess is that why you're there? Is that why you're in that location, so that you can be close to Children's Hospital?
Yes, that originally that was our primary hospital that we saw children in up until about 8 years ago. And since that time, it's about equal University Hospital and Children's Hospital.
Okay, and if a professional, a mandated reporter at Children's Hospital had a case where they suspected child abuse, they would refer that to your office?
Pretty much. They would at least give us a call.
Okay, and then if your office found that there was cause to suspect child abuse after any inspection or any referral, any consultation, sorry, would you then report that to law enforcement?
Well, most of the time, at the same time that we're called by the treating doctors, the treating team is also calling law enforcement and CPS.
Gotcha.
So usually by the time we get there, those agencies are already involved. If for some unusual reason that hasn't happened yet, we have on occasion made reports ourselves. Yes.
Okay, so all right, very good. And then you said that by the time you saw Olivia, you couldn't look at her mouth, right?
Yes, sir.
So you couldn't see that frenulum, that injury, the laceration there, right?
Yes, sir. I did not see that.
Okay, and that was because it was taped, right?
Correct.
But prior to that, somebody, if you've reviewed the University Health records in this case, right?
Yes.
And somebody looked in her mouth, right?
Well, I don't really know. You have to remember she was critically ill. She was dying. And so the focus in the emergency room, or really with EMS also, was get her airway stabilized, get oxygen going. And so I don't really know if anyone ever had the opportunity to flip that lip over and look. It's entirely possible they did not.
Well, but three different doctors noted in the U of H records that you reviewed, right?
Yes.
They noted that she was missing a tooth after her intubation, so apparently before it was taped up, correct?
Yes, I guess so. Yes, sir.
Okay. And they would had to have looked in her mouth to see that, right?
Yeah, that doesn't mean they saw the frenulum tear, but yeah, I'm sure they looked in their mouth, in her mouth in the process of doing the intubation.
Sure. Okay. Now, when you said that you rarely see in your practice any serious injuries from stairway falls, was that your testimony?
Yes, and also that's what's in the medical literature. It's
And we'll
very
get to
rare.
that. Don't worry, we'll get to that. But in your practice, you rarely see serious injuries from stairway falls, right?
Correct.
And then, but you don't see the ones that don't go to the hospital, right?
Yeah, by and large, that's true.
I mean, you're a medical practitioner, you're treating the people who survive, right?
Yes, yes, my role is, yeah, I deal with living children who've been hurt. Yes.
Fair enough. And then you said the consensus, and this is what we were just getting at, the consensus in the medical literature is that stairway falls in children do not typically cause serious injury, correct?
Correct.
But again, that's medical literature, right?
Well, that includes like Consumer Product Safety Commission, the federal agencies that collect the data on accidents and so forth.
Okay,
That goes into the reviews that are conducted in the medical literature.
okay. And medical literature, these are like medical journals, right? That are run by medical schools around the country, correct?
Yes, that's a fair
Typically.
statement. Yes.
And have you contributed any articles to medical journals?
Yes.
And when you do that, well, let me just ask, do a lot of practicing physicians also contribute articles to medical journals?
Most physicians who are in like regular office practices or hospital practices don't really publish very much. But those of us that are affiliated with a medical school, that is sort of an expectation that we publish. And so we do.
Publish or perish, right?
It's been said.
Okay, and then so typically, I guess those articles are written by either medical students or medical professors, people in academia who may also have private practices, correct?
I would say, yes, it's primarily people that are like at the faculty level. Medical students participate to some extent, but I would say it's really driven by those of us that are like on the faculty.
Got it. Okay, pass those.
State.
No further questions.
Is this witness excused or subject to recall?
I'm the station being excused. Or he being excused.
Subject to recall, Judge, but we have no objection doing it by Zoom if it's.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state or the defense.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, thank you. State, call your next witness. Break. Okay, all right. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm gonna have us come back at 11:50. Remember, make sure your badges are displayed. If you hear anything, see anything, don't watch, turn away. Everything that you need to know will come from inside this courtroom, so no research, no deliberating or discussing amongst yourselves or even internally with your own self. I will let you know when it's time to deliberate. Everyone, please rise for the jurors. You know what, they did. I can go get it. All right, so State, are you gonna have another witness?
Yes.
Okay,
We
and
have
who is,
two that should be pretty quick and then we'll be done.
Two, did you say?
no, we're not on the record. Okay, so I'm gonna ask, excuse me, we're still in the middle. Thank you. So, okay. All right, in defense, do you anticipate recalling any witnesses?
Possibly, I need to consult. Can I ask, did they say who you witness to?
We had one of the officers who just had screenshots of the stairs that day. And then, one of the neighbors.
Oh,
All right, so here's the court, we can mute.
order.
No, I was not worried about the order of the setup of the stairs, and that was the stairs. If that makes sense. 'Cause I'm just showing it for the stairs.
Right. I'm just saying, I don't want it to give the impression that it's in order.
Right over here. Right here. This is just a bit difficult, this right here. So, really trying to-
Okay. And are they kind of, they're not in order though, right? That's not.
They're not in.
All right, for the
They're
jury.
not necessarily chronological. They're just.
They're just sort of random shots. Okay,
So, I mean, I tried to make it kind of make sense.
got it. All right. Okay.
Well, please be seated. State call your next witness.
Your Honor, the state call is Amana.
Would you raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
All right, then raise your hand. I'm gonna need you to speak up so everyone can hear.
Okay.
State your name and spell it.
Zaid, Z-A-I-D, first name, last name, A-M-A-N-A, Amana.
Okay. What apartment complex do you live in?
534.
Oh, wow. You're very loud.
I'm sorry.
You can push the microphone away from you a little bit.
I'm so sorry.
Just,
Um,
could we approach,
Yes. All right, state.
Okay, Mr. Amana, what is the name of the apartment?
Let me just remember. I forget about it. I
Okay,
just get nervous.
it's which is on Trace Apartments?
A Trace apartment.
Oh,
yes.
okay,
I'm
there you
sorry.
go. Do you know what apartment number you live in?
Yes, 534.
Okay, and is that on the third floor?
Yes.
Okay, and does that share a wall with 535?
Yes.
Do you recall, were you in that apartment back in September of 2017?
Yes.
Okay, and do you recall who lived next door to you?
I know them like when I saw them. Like just we not even talk. I
So
saw them like couple times.
male, female, can you describe who was living there?
I saw one male and one time I'm going back morning in the morning early,
Okay.
like around 4. I saw
Let me ask you this. Do you recall Jessica Briones and her daughter living next door to you?
yes, I saw them one time.
Okay. Were you working at the time?
No, it was weekend. I just going back home.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you recall, well, what was the layout of your apartment? Were you, is it one story, two story, I mean, 1 bedroom or 2 bedroom?
2 bedroom,
Okay. And how many bathrooms are there?
2.
Okay. And where are the bathrooms located?
One on the middle, like sharing a wall with them. On the second one, also on the same side, just on inside the master room.
Okay. I'm gonna try to show you what's been admitted at State's Exhibit 170, if I can find it in here. It was a hand-drawn layout. Do you know Joni Fairclough?
Yeah, the manager.
The partner?
Yes.
Okay. may not be able to find it. But is that middle bathroom, is it in the hallway?
Yes,
Now, you live there, what was your primary bathroom that you used?
actually, all the time I use the middle one.
The middle one?
Yes,
Okay. Were you, back in 2017, did you have any kind of unusual hours? Where you would be home, unusual hours, get home late, anything like that?
most of the weekend I go back late. I just go out, hang out with my friend.
Okay, and what time would you get back home?
4 or 5,
In the morning?
yes,
Okay. So, when you were getting ready for bed, would you go to the bathroom and get ready for bed?
yes,
Do you ever recall hearing anything unusual?
yeah, crying baby.
Okay. And do you have children of your own?
Yes, I do.
How old are they?
1, 6 on the second one. When that happened, I have just the first one who was right now she's 6. The second one, it's 2, almost a 3.
She's almost 3 years old.
Yes.
When you said you heard a baby crying, can you describe what the cry sounded like?
I know baby crying, just I thought like they are hungry, just it take a while till they be quiet again,
Okay.
Yeah.
So-
And that's happened a lot. Like we'll say like every day or every couple of days, just like I used to it.
Okay, so you heard it almost every day?
Or every couple of days, yeah, maybe today and after today, after tomorrow, I mean, so basically almost every day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Your Honor, can I get him to stand off the witness stand?
Yes.
Okay, can you come down here?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay, I'm gonna imagine this post is a wall. This is the wall on the right side of your bathroom. And the jury is your mirror, okay? Can you come here, stand here? Okay, stand in front of the jury.
Okay.
Jury is the mirror to your bathroom, right?
Okay.
And here's the wall.
Okay.
If you are getting ready or to go to bed at the sink, how close is the crying of the baby?
Usually I use
Objection, Judge. He can't tell how close the crying is happening on the other side of the wall.
I can rephrase the question.
All right, that'll be sustained.
the wall behind me when I use the bathroom. Usually I play with my phone, so it takes me a while, like
Okay,
30 minutes.
let
15
me,
minutes.
let me rephrase.
All right,
the
so
question.
here's the
Let me
thing,
rephrase
everyone, stop. Court reporter can only take down one person at a time. All right, and the other thing, your voice is very loud, but since you're not with the microphone, if you could make sure your voice is raised up so that the jurors can hear and the court reporter can hear.
Okay.
Okay, let me ask you the question.
Mhm.
So you are getting ready for bed. Is the wall right here? Am I correct? If the sink's here, is the wall right here?
Yes.
Okay. Is it when you're in the bathroom, when you would hear the baby crying?
Like, yeah, it's just like, it's look like there is someone sharing the bathroom with me, like the baby next to me. That's how I hear it.
Okay, so if you're, if you're standing right here and there's a wall right here,
Yeah,
does it sound like the baby is close to the wall?
exactly.
Or-
Objection,
or
Judge,
does it
there's no
sound-
way for him to know that.
All right, your objection will be overruled.
Or does it sound muffled, like it's further away,
Next to the wall.
next to the wall?
Yes.
Now, can you tell, is the crying, is it waist high? Or can you tell?
Objection, Judge.
it's
Now
coming-
that she's
Low.
asking him to.
It's
pick-
coming-
Just, all right, so here's the thing, everyone. One person speaks one at a time. No,
Can I finish?
you're new to testifying,
Okay.
but everyone else knows one person speaks one at a time. State, you can ask your question, and then defense, I'll hear your objection.
Yes, sir.
So you said you heard crying and it sounded like it was very close to you. Were you able to tell if the crying came from maybe the waist level or if it was more close to the ground?
Close to
Tony,
the-
All right, just 1 second. You have an objection.
The objection is that he can't, they're now asking him to pinpoint. It calls for speculation.
All right, that'll be overruled. If you can answer it. If you can't answer it, then don't answer it.
It's like close to the ground. Just because I'm sit down on the toilet and just hear it right next to my ear.
Okay. All right.
Exactly.
Thank you. You can go sit down again. And again, how often would you hear this?
Asked and answered, Judge.
That'll be sustained.
Okay, I'll pass the witness.
You did say that you heard it frequently, or first you said every night, but then you said, well, maybe every other night, but it was a
No.
lot, right?
A lot, not maybe. It's either every day. It's not every day, maybe not today. Okay, it happened today, not tomorrow, after tomorrow.
Okay.
Just so far, a lot.
Okay, and then, but you did say previously that over time that it became less frequent, right?
What that's mean?
That it didn't happen as often as time went on.
And
No,
I'll object to mischaracterization. I don't.
That'll be overruled. You can answer the question.
Did you ever tell the DA's office or the police or any investigator that at first it was it happening a lot, but then as time went on, it didn't happen as often?
no.
You never told anybody that?
You
Object
mean,
to
yeah,
asking.
it's happened like right now and 15 minutes later, it will happen again. I didn't get the question. That's why.
Okay, pass the witness.
No further questions, Sheriff.
All right, thank you. The rule has been invoked. What that means is you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you can speak to are attorneys for the state or the defense. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
State, call your next witness.
Going to the state calls Officer Meade.
Oh, I'm sorry. You can step down. You're excused.
Oh, thank you.
You can go. Yeah, you can go. Thank you.
All right, officers, you come take the stand, please. Can you raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you solemnly swear affirm the testimony you give will be the truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you can lower your hand, state your name for the record, and please spell it.
Yvette Meade, Yvette, Meade, Meade.
State.
Okay, Officer Meade, you testified earlier in the trial.
Yes,
When you went out to the Chisholm Trace Apartments on September 5th, 2017, how long were you at those apartments?
I think we were roughly about 2 hours or so that I recall off memory. It was a while outside, like in the hall area.
Okay. And you know, there's 2 sets of stairways. In
Correct.
those apartments. Did you go up and down both of those stairways?
I did. Mhm.
And as a police officer, were you looking for anything suspicious in the area?
We weren't told that anything had occurred directly to me or me overhearing any of the other, the defendant tell any of the other officers that anything had occurred on the stairs. So we weren't specifically, but we were there for 2 hours. So I was just kind of going up and down the stairs, just looking around. You know, it's just typical with our job. I don't know what kind of jobs y'all have, but maybe in your job, you do something that other people wouldn't do normally on your job and off your job. So we just kind of look around for suspicious, anything on there that we would see that may be blood or anything like that.
Okay. Did you see any hair on the stairs?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Did you see any fresh blood on the stairs?
Definitely not any blood.
Did you go and talk to neighbors that day?
We did.
Did any neighbors report a child, crying on the stairway or in the hallway that morning?
That particular day, no. They had heard previous days, but not that particular day.
But on the stairs?
No, not on the stairs, from inside the apartment.
Object to hearsay, Judge.
Sustained.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
Okay, I'm handing you what I have labeled State's Exhibits 186 and 187. What are these screenshots from?
This is the stairs and hallway area to her apartment.
Okay, have you reviewed State's Exhibit 186 and 187?
Have I reviewed them? Yes.
Okay, are these fair and accurate depictions of the stairways as you remember them from that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and are these screenshots from your body cam?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell the jury, when you're in uniform, where on your body is the body cam located?
Typically, I don't know if that day I used different ones, but it's either in the middle part or I have it on the sleeve in my pocket, but I think this day it was in my middle.
Okay, now when we're going through 186 and 187, it's not chronologically in order, correct? But it does it fairly and accurately display different angles of each stairway going up?
Absolutely.
Okay. Your Honor, I would offer State's Exhibits 186 and 187.
Judge, I've looked at the documents. I don't have any objection.
All right, States Exhibit 186 and 187 is admitted without objection.
Your Honor, may I publish to the jury?
Oh, Judge,
I've lost a couple more. You can.
Judge, I'm gonna need those exhibits to cross.
Oh,
Oh,
there,
okay.
she just has them with the jury now, but I believe she's going to ask some more questions, but you'll have time to have those to cross.
Okay. So, do you recall what other officers were there on the scene that day?
To my recollection, my partner, Art Hernandez, Kim Corey, who's now a detective, and a retired officer. I apologize, I just went blank. I'm so sorry. There was another one there. I can't think of his name right now. I went blank.
Okay. Did any of them ever take, pictures of the stairs or any other documentation of the stairs other than body cam?
No, not them particular, but the CSI Archie Ants was also there. He showed up
Okay.
before he was going to get into the apartment.
And did any of them report to you seeing anything suspicious about the stairs?
No.
Was there any indication that there needed to be any sort of investigation of the stairs that day?
No, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness. I know defense counsel may need those exhibits back.
That's okay. We can use them for a minute and we'll get to them in a second because I have a couple other questions for you, officer. So, but the CSI, did you see the CSI team when they were there?
I just saw CSI Archie Ants. He showed up prior. So he was just kind of standing around and then later was taking some pictures just from the outside. I did not go into the inside.
Okay, so he showed up, he showed up prior to you, is that what you said?
No, he showed up a little bit after we had gotten there.
After you got there?
Yes.
Okay, and CSI took very thorough pictures of the crime, of what they alleged was a crime scene, correct?
I wasn't watching him the whole time, but Archie is very thorough.
They were inside. taking
Oh, you're
pictures.
talking inside? I was not there when they went inside.
Okay, did did anyone direct you to take any pictures of, sorry, to do anything with the stairs?
No, we were not given any information from the defendant that anything had occurred on the stairs or me overhearing that she had told anybody that anything had occurred on the stairs.
Right. No, she didn't know anything happened on the stairs.
Okay.
But did Detective Barnes, who is in charge of collecting evidence and determining what happened in the case, did she ever direct you? Was she the person in charge of the scene? By the
No.
way? Who was in charge of the scene?
I don't know. There was many people doing many jobs, so I couldn't tell you. I know 2 detectives had showed up, but I don't think it was Barnes at that time. So I couldn't tell you who was in charge at that point. I can't
So
recall.
what were you doing there?
We were just standing by at the apartment to make sure there was no entry made to the apartment until CSI and detectives made the location.
Okay, now, there are not any pictures in the evidence in this case that CSI took of the stairs. Did they take any, did you see them taking pictures of the stairs?
I think he was like on different levels. So I couldn't tell you if he was taking pictures of the stairs or if he was just taking pictures of, the location. There's always a step to how they take pictures. But he was outside on different levels taking pictures. So he could have. I couldn't tell you for sure.
He could have. And certainly if he had, those pictures would have been presented to this jury, right?
Obviously.
Okay. Now, you said you didn't see anything on, can I see those for just a second? I'll get them back, I promise. I just want to review one little point on here with the officer. Can I approach you?
Yes.
So, in states 186 and 187, these are time stamped up here, right?
Okay. Yes, if it's correct. Sometimes the new ones were off, but they should be good.
Okay, and
Yeah.
that timestamp comes from your body cam.
Correct. Mhm.
And whether it's the correct time or not, it's certainly the,
When we
it's in the
arrive.
right order. It will be in the right order.
These would not be in the right order of them putting them on here. They're probably not chronological.
Right, these are in random, that's what I'm getting. at.
Yes,
These
yes,
are
sir.
in random order.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. So these pictures have been put into random order in order to get a good sort of idea of what the stairs might have looked like.
I guess. I thought earlier she said that they weren't in random order, so I don't know.
Well, we can look at the
Yeah, I guess so.
timestamps,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And see
Okay.
whether or not they're.
Yeah, I didn't look at the timestamps earlier, so I couldn't, but
Okay.
now, yes.
So what I'm getting at is you weren't there inspecting these stairs. You weren't looking for evidence, correct?
When we were there for 2 hours and we were looking at just down everywhere, but no, specifically, I did not get a call saying, please look for blood or hair at the location.
Okay, and you were but you were there for 2 hours, but in that time, a lot of people had gone up and down those stairs, right?
I would say maybe roughly about 5, maybe before anybody really got there. So maybe about 5, if that,
Okay.
for that long period, because it takes a while for everybody to kind of get over there. And so I would say about 5.
No, I'm saying in that 2-hour period that you were there,
Correct.
you say 5 people.
Of us? Yes, correct.
Of
Mhm.
of you, were there others?
I think just one of the residents had maybe left down the other side of the stairs and that was it.
Okay. Suffice to say, you had not taped off the stairs as a crime scene.
Correct.
Okay, and when the 5 officers who were going up and down the stairs, there were no photos taken prior of those stairs prior to them going up and down.
No photos, just off body cam. That's it.
Just whatever happened to fall into the view of your body cam, but not, you weren't doing that to document those
Correct.
specific stairs. Sorry, if you can wait till I finish, just because the court reporter's having trouble.
Sorry about that.
So, and I think you testified that you didn't see any hair on those stairs, right?
Not that when I was walking around now.
But that's it. You were walking around. You weren't looking for hair, right?
No, but I was looking for evidence. We just, like I said, in your occupation, just as other occupations, you do something that's different than other people would do. I mean, it's kind of awkward, but I'm somewhere and I'm looking, I used to do a little bit of crime scene. So, I didn't see anything out of the ordinary. Was I specifically looking every little piece? No, I was not, but I did look on the floor as we were coming up and going down the stairs.
And that's how one looks for hair, is by specifically looking for every little piece, right? Hair is kind of tiny. Will you agree?
Sure.
Okay. You don't just see it when you happen to be walking by it. Would you agree?
Sure.
Okay. Same with if there had been, in this case, these were closed head injuries, so there wouldn't have been blood, but there could have been skin that had scraped off onto those stairs if someone fell down those stairs. But you wouldn't see that by just walking by, right?
Not sure.
Okay, so, and typically in order to detect DNA, there's a procedure for that. You said you've done some CSI work.
Not that much.
Okay. But you're familiar with how that works, right?
I'm familiar with seeing skin, large pieces of hair, skin, etc. Yes, I
Okay.
have seen that.
You're familiar with how they swab for DNA, correct?
Correct.
And it will pick up even if the skin is not large. I'm not talking about big chunks of skin coming off.
Correct. Mhm.
The purpose of swabbing for DNA is so that you can pick up
Yes,
DNA that might not be visible or might not be obvious when one just happens to be walking by.
You are correct.
And that you saw the CSI team never swabbed those stairs for DNA, any part of those stairs, the rail.
From the beginning, I did not on mine, but they were there hours after I had left, so I couldn't tell you anything. But from when I was there, I did not see any swabbing.
And again, if they had, that surely would have been given to this jury, correct?
Yes.
That's
No further questions, Joel.
All right, is this witness excused or subject for recall?
Excuse from the state.
recall, please, Judge.
All right, the rule has been invoked. What that means, you can't discuss your testimony with anyone. The only persons you're allowed to speak to are attorneys for the state and the defense.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you may step down. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take our lunch break now. And if everyone, I'm looking at the clock, I know it's 12:17. I'm estimating how much time to walk to different locations and thinking about the fact that it's raining. So if I can have everyone back here by 1:45, is that enough time for everyone? All right, so remember my rules. Keep the badges displayed. If you hear anyone talking about this case, or if you see anything or hear anything, don't listen to it, turn it off. No research. Everything that you need to know about this case will come from the courtroom. No deliberating internally with yourself or with each other. I'll let you know when it's time to deliberate. All right, everyone, please rise.